Welcome to Podcast, the Business of Dentistry Podcast, brought to you by Practice Plan. Podcast delivers the best business advice, real-life stories, and practical hints and tips to make your practice a more profitable and sustainable business. And now, here's your host.
Welcome to Podcast. My name's Hazel Dockery from Practice Plan, and with me today is dentist and practice owner Ant Davies. Ant converted from NHS to private 3 years ago with Practice Plan, and so we're having a catch up. A lot has changed since the last time Ant and I spoke, so it's great to find out how things have been going. Welcome, Ant.
Hi, Hazel. You okay?
Yeah, great to have you here. Before we start talking about how things are now, would you like to just give a bit of background about who you are and how we got to where we are today?
Yeah, so I'm a dentist, as you've already said. I have worked in sort of West Cumbria for 10, 12 years now, I think. Initially as an associate dentist, and then ended up buying two practices that I was kind of working in at the time, which had quite a big NHS contract split between the two sites.
Yeah.
And I think kind of 11 months into the process, COVID hit, and we had all of the stresses, and it seems like a distant memory now. It's about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And we had all that kind of stress and aggro, and sort of a bit of it was about to a fire anyway. I think taking on two practices, but then I think to then have to deal with all of that side of things as well was a bit of a stressful time. Off the back of that, obviously the whole landscape of dentistry kind of changed, and we sort of found ourselves in a position where we weren't really able to deliver the NHS contract anymore. It wasn't working, couldn't recruit. It's hard enough recruiting, sort of rurally and that sort of things as well. So that kind of spurred us on to then the conversion side of things and moving away from the NHS, which I think as soon as we started offering private roles, we then the recruitment side of things was eased quite a bit. Managed to attract some associates. Had a bit of a strange conversion. One, we had quite long-standing associates at one site, so the conversion wasn't really a success of a conversion wasn't really too much of a surprise. The other one was three new dentists that patients weren't necessarily they didn't know them at all, so they were coming in, and we still had a successful conversion, kind of at the practice, which I think was sort of unheard of at the time, but maybe reflective of the changing landscape of dentistry, I guess, at that stage. So two practices successfully converted, which was 3 years ago now, and it's kind of gone from strength to strength really, and we've seen kind of that growth over that last few years. And then I wasn't so much in the market for another practice really. I wouldn't have said, but one kind of came up to market on our doorstep. I was already familiar with the practice because they're all within a mile of each other. In the towns, so it was more of a consideration for how that maybe affected the others, and kind of rather than necessarily wanted to add another practice to the group, it was more kind of, if you don't do it, there may be other implications. So so I looked into that, and I think because of the success of what we've been able to do with the other two, it wasn't a problem for being able to acquire the third one really. That completed in March this year. So we're now a group of three. The new one's got an in-house lab. We've got a CDT, so we're able to do kind of dentures using someone who's kind of a specialist there in that. Sedation services, specialist endo services, and things like that. So we're trying to grow that bit of it now. So we've kind of gone from, I guess, a large NHS contract and two practices to one of them failing and nearly probably closing the doors because we didn't have dentists in it, to kind of three thriving practices within the same town, and trying to kind of integrate the three together and kind of working that way really. So,
I mean, you went against the trend basically, didn't you? Because what we always used to say at Practice Plan was that you needed to have fairly well established dentists so that there was a relationship and that patients would stay with them. But none of that was true. And also, the area, West Cumbria, where you were in, it's not known as somewhere that you would think, oh, we'll have a thriving private dental practice there.
No,
is it?
No, it's not. It's somewhere that's probably fairly high need. Although I would say it's always been a little kind of niche really for it's fairly high need, but we've got Sellafield, which is a major employer just down the road. And that probably keeps a lot of kind of West Cumbria alive and going, but it does in some, not every sort of household, but there's a few people with a bit of a disposable income, so there's they potentially can kind of sort of stretch to it. So yeah, there's kind of that does probably change it a little bit. But no, it certainly didn't go with the trend of what you'd normally expect. I think I was already at the time. I think I was in the process of converting just my list because I think I'd kind of had enough of the NHS side of things and I was converting my list, and I think that was likely to be successful as you would kind of normally kind of expect, because I'd been there for I think nearly 10 years at the time, and it was what you would normally kind of traditionally look to do. And then obviously everything changed, and I think I went back to Jane, our sort of regional manager, and said, how about the whole thing, because I think this is kind of starting to slip away from us a little bit here. And I think I think for Nook Street, where we'd lost the dentists and weren't able to recruit, it was a bit kind of do or die really. We didn't really have anything to lose at that point either, so it was it was worth taking a plunge and seeing where we got to, and it was thankfully successful. So
really, rather than being sort of a scary time, it was a case of I got no choice, I've got to do this type thing.
I suppose it was scary in the sense that you are leaving. I don't know, the NHS contracts are a funny thing really, because you're told that there's a lot of security in it, and obviously it's tied to probably the value of practices as well to some extent, and things that are largely, they're not necessarily day-to-day things that you necessarily see, because obviously for that security there's, and I don't know, since leaving it I disagree with it a lot. I think people kind of probably get I don't know how best to describe it really. They're probably a little bit brainwashed into thinking that there's this security that actually is sort of a false title really, because I don't feel now that I have less security than I did when I had the NHS contract. I think if anything, I feel more secure in the fact that I know that I can do what I need to do for my business rather than being tied to something. So there was a scary point at that stage that you're taking that plunge and you're sort of walking into the unknown. You trust in someone else's advice. Someone's coming in and telling you that this is what we can do with the conversion, and kind of there'll be lots of financial aspects to that, and there'll be other parts to it that you're sort of trusting someone else externally coming into doing that. And it's a bit of a leap of faith, I guess. You kind of have to kind of go with it, and it's always scary when you do that anyway, isn't it? I think, but it works out well.
Screw your courage to the sticking place, basically, isn't it? So, I mean, 3 years on, you're offering also. You were sort of like general dentistry. It was like an 80-20 split back then, wasn't it? You could do a bit of private. So now, of course, it's all private. How has it changed as far as the treatments and the way that things work in practice for the patients as well?
So I'd say we're able to offer we're able to offer all treatments really. It's something that we haven't got. There's no kind of shackles on what we can provide. Obviously through the acquisition of the other practice, we've got some specialist things that have been able to be offered there. And then it's given, I guess, the dentist the ability to just improve on skills and kind of if you're offering general dentistry, I suppose you're offering general dentistry. It doesn't necessarily change that much, but you've got more time to be able to apply different techniques and hopefully improve outcomes really for patients. Plus, I suppose use the skill mix a little bit more. If someone has got a bit of an interest in something, then we can kind of funnel that to them and give it to the person that's going to be kind of best to do it. Which is a nice position to be, which is the bit that we're probably now concentrating a lot more on, I would say, at this point. So
I mean it sounds great. So you're almost an accidental group owner, aren't you? Because from what you said, you weren't planning to have the third one.
It was really. That's probably a good way to describe it, I would say, because I think my time as an owner hasn't been stress-free. It's we had the pandemic and kind of all of that side of things, and there's certainly points where you kind of think, is this the right kind of direction? Is this the way you want to be kind of going? And I think overall, it definitely is. I wouldn't really change it for the world now, and you kind of come out the back of those kind of tough times. I suppose within that first sort of 5 years of ownership, and like any business, you're probably going to see some change. Maybe I wouldn't necessarily want to be as extreme as it kind of was at the time, but I suppose what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, doesn't it? So you kind of come out the back of it, and I don't tend to be that phased by stuff these days. It's kind of it's just taking your stride, and there's always stresses, there's always things that you have to kind of deal with, or bits and pieces that fall on your lap that you weren't necessarily expecting. But and I think that the third one, probably as a result of that, I wasn't necessarily going out and in the market looking, but then I also don't tend to shy away from an opportunity if it's there. So I kind of it wasn't necessarily part of some big master plan or some big game plan. I know some people will be that's their whole vision, is to acquire practices and kind of that sort of things, and that certainly isn't my sort of approach. I tend to try. I don't kind of want them to become this kind of corporate thing. I kind of like it that I think 3 probably is still manageable to have some presence and keep it so that it's still independently led. There's still a more personal approach to it, and it's not just kind of systems in place to run across the all of it. Obviously you have to have some systems in place, and you try and kind of streamline certain things and make it more uniform, just for simplicity more than anything else. But it kind
and
of,
your own sanity.
That's it. If you're doing 3 different things at 3 different sites, that gets a bit tricky. So there's certain things you try and make the same, but overall all 3 of them have a very different characters, and they're 3 completely different practices, and they kind of it shows through the teams and things within it as well. So you also have to be mindful of that.
So what is the plan for the future? I mean, where are things going as far as you're concerned?
So I think it's really trying to kind of grow that kind of integration between the 3, with that kind of referral to either specialist services, or having the right people doing the right things, and patients getting the options and kind of the choices to have the treatment they kind of want or need, really. And I think that's kind of been the focus since we've taken the new one on, because we've now got this option to refer and keep that kind of almost internalized. It's then working with kind of the dentists to kind of try and show them that kind of extended kind of use of different skills. We've got sort of therapists at each of them, and they all work to their full sort of capacity and sort of scope, which we like to try and encourage. And it's really that focus on the kind of growing the specialist bits and pieces, really, I guess, alongside it, alongside the general stuff, because obviously still that's our bread and butter. Is the bit that keeps everything kind of going, is the kind of the general dentistry. And I think I don't know, I would say probably a lot of specialist practices these days, they're probably still, unless you are kind of really taking a large number of external referrals, you probably still, a lot of dentists probably end up having to have a bit of a specialist interest, but still keeping a little bit of a general list that they still kind of have historically maintained and sort of kept. So that's kind of it's getting that mix right, I guess, between the the two of specialty and sort of general dentistry. But yeah, that's kind of what we're kind of working on at the moment and trying to integrate. So.
And how does having a plan help you? A membership plan.
I think that's definitely where it comes into that sort of security side of things we talked about earlier on. Having that kind of consistent, regular monthly income from plan patients is it's a bit of a game changer, really. You certainly, fee per item is obviously it's a way to go, but you don't get that same consistency of patients regularly coming back. I think fee per item side of things, it probably creep a little bit. If it's 6 months, it potentially could be 9, or maybe it might be 12 because they've forgotten or lapsed, and there's not a commitment to something. Whereas I think if they're paying into something, they want those appointments, and they intend to then kind of come in for that. So you get those kind of points of contact regularly with your patients, and that's obviously a good thing. But I think from a financial security side of things, I think the plan probably has its that's where it comes into most effect, I would say. We've found probably one of the challenges over the years since converting, and it's at all 3 sites really, is the hygiene element. You kind of, it's initially you're worried about the patient numbers, and then when you hit your numbers, and actually they're quite big plan lists. I think all of our dentists have quite high numbers really between them. So the actual challenge then becomes enough hygiene capacity to then give them the hygiene that's part of their plan that they're paying for, because the change in sort of landscape of dentistry and the sort of scope of it, there's not so many kind of solely hygienists these days. A lot of it's mainly dental therapists, right? And obviously they've trained to do something that they want to then use their full scope of practice. So you do have that sort of challenge to contend with. You've got a plan list that obviously requires that hygiene element to be provided, so the patients are getting what they need from it. But a sort of a dwindling market for people wanting to provide that, just solely that hygiene element, which is why we've kind of gone to quite lengths really to sort of try and use our therapists to give them that kind of full skill mix and try and kind of get them doing those extra bits and pieces, because I think otherwise it's an area where people become less satisfied and then you don't have any kind of capacity at that point then. So which is understandable. If somebody's trained to do lots of different things, then that's what they want to do, isn't it, really? And I suppose that's reflective of dentistry in general. I mean, the workforce I think it's reflective of probably healthcare in general. I think if you look at kind of the structure of kind of skill mix within GP practices or kind of hospitals and things like that as well, there's a lot of transfer of skills, isn't there, to kind of people that are able to do those things. Why shouldn't they do that? And then the other people that are able to do the more advanced stuff, have them doing the advanced stuff. So it kind of, I think it probably does fit that sort of mold really to some extent. So
so let's talk about Jane. I mean, Jane held your hand through everything. Is she still around?
Yeah, Jane's still around. I think we keep in touch fairly regularly, and she's always been there as someone that kind of an extra kind of advisor or kind of pair of ears to kind of listen over something or give advice on. And I think she's been kind of incredibly valuable to the business really, and from start of the conversion to even now. There's things that we kind of I'll pick up the phone and just run something by her just to sort of get her feel for something, or kind of see how that's going to work alongside the plan, or kind of how things are going to sort of move forward. So very much still present. She'll still sort of come up and visit, and we'll go out for lunch or whatever and have a little bit of a meeting and a catch up fairly regularly. She's still about, and she's almost part of the team really, I would say these days. She kind of everyone knows who she is when she comes into the practice, and is kind of happy to see her. So
that's good to hear. So just to sort of sum up, how would you say that life is in practice now compared with 3 years ago when you were facing closure?
It's completely different, I would say. It's almost, I almost don't really remember that previous life, if that makes sense.
Block it out. Block it out. Yeah.
it's kind of gone. I mean, it certainly is less stress. There's not no stress, because obviously, you're running three practices. There's a certain level to it, but right. It's not the same. It's not the same type of stress. I think the stress of closure or not having people providing kind of the dentistry treatment and things like that is a completely different stress to kind of having that team around you and kind of working with them to try and improve things. It's kind of it's a growth thing now, really, rather than just trying to save sort of chucking buckets of water out the sinking boat type thing. It's very much kind of looking towards that kind of future of how can we improve on this, and that's a big difference to kind of the conversations I'll have with our managers, or maybe even Jane. It's more about how we can improve on these things rather than just kind of establish something, if that makes sense. And it's that's kind of a nice position to be in, because you're not just treading water anymore. You're actually kind of swimming. So it's
well, you're actually genuinely waving, not drowning now.
This is it. So completely different to how it was, and a lack of that sort of bureaucracy, and that kind of overarching thing, hoops that you have to jump through that just they're not there anymore. We kind of make our own hoops and kind of set our own targets and decide on how we want to do things. I mean, I've just used the word target there, but actually on the whole there isn't really kind of targets as such. All of our dentists do what they kind of need to do for their patients, and I'm not someone that sits there sort of breathing down the neck and kind of telling you have to do this, that, or the other. There's a freedom to it, which is a lot less stressful.
No regrets?
Absolutely no regrets. No, none whatsoever.
And you'd do it all again?
I'd do it all again. Yeah, I would do it all again. I think I'd struggle not to keep doing it. So it's kind of,
That's brilliant. I'd love to hear a happy ending, especially since you were actually in quite a precarious position 3 years ago. To see you now, it's just brilliant. So thank you so much for sparing your time, because I know you must be extremely busy running 3 practices, but busy in a good way, I hope.
Yeah, busy in a good way. It's a good problem to have. I'm having to pop in a minute actually and sort something else out, so it'll be not quite the weekend yet, so it'll be another busy day.
Well, brilliant. Anyway, thank you so much for speaking to us. It's brilliant to hear from you. Thanks, Ant.
Thanks for your time.